7 proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your host, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. We're right in the middle of the off-season of the NBL, obviously, but given everything we're dealing with COVID-19, given all of the talk still around the basketball world right now, plenty still for us to talk about here on Basketball Hustle. So I'm Chris Pike, the co-host, ready to get into another episode. We've got a special guest ready to go as well, which I'm really looking forward to, somebody that both myself and my co-host have a long history with. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Scoring machine, Shawn Redhage, how do I find you this week?
Yeah, a little bit same Groundhog's Day. I tell you what, my yard and the house has never looked better.
Good.
You know, just getting a lot of things done that we haven't had time to in the past. So, but I am looking forward to a little bit of normalcy, getting back out on the basketball court, hopefully with the way things are going sooner rather than later.
To me, you don't seem like a natural gardener or a handyman. How do you go when you're outside of the house? Do you get the job done?
Yeah, no, I do all right. I do look forward to growing up. My parents used to always make me cut our lawn, and we had a soccer field next to our house, so you would be spending hours having to mow the lawn, and I always said, no, I don't want a big yard. Thankfully, we don't have too much of grass, but I do enjoy just getting outside and being able to smell of cutting some fresh grass that brings back the childhood.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember talking to you about that for the book, about the soccer field that was the place to be for everyone in your area there when you were growing up. So you're not immune to a bit of outside work. Are you and Dylan still hitting the basketball court on the driveway too?
Yeah, we do. We've the basketball hoop is getting a lot of work out, usually a couple times a day out there on the driveway putting up some shots. So it's a great chance to get outside. If you're a young player out there or a parent, listen to this. This time is actually a pretty good time to actually really develop the skill level of a kid. So a chance to not always you don't get to play in the games, but you can really up your skill level in a quick period of time.
Yeah, it's a great point. Even for professionals as well. I imagine in this period, if this was 10 years ago, you would have taken this chance as a player to improve areas of your game and try to get an advantage over some of your opponents who perhaps might not be working as hard during this period. Would you be really putting in a lot of effort right now if this was 10 years ago and you had this opportunity to work on different parts of your game?
Yeah, I think it is a chance to, you don't have a lot of other commitments. So if this is your full-time gig and you're a professional basketball player, pick one or two skills that you want to improve on. You don't have the rigors of a lot of other commitments, so it's a chance to get better and probably, try and strengthen some of those weaknesses in your game, especially if you're a young player as well. It's a great opportunity, and I've seen a lot of at-home workouts and people posting stuff, so it's great to see. Basketball is one of those sports that kind of lends towards skill development as well, and being able to do something at your house and in your own driveway.
Now, the big news of this week, of course, was at the Perth Wildcats, and it was Bryce Cotton opting out of his contract for this upcoming NBL season. You would think a big reason for that is the fact that he's had to take a 50% pay cut, so I don't think anyone can blame him for making the decision that he's made. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
I actually thought it was to be expected. I thought as soon as the league came out and said 50% pay cut, you knew a guy like Bryce Cotton, who might have produced, the greatest basketball we've seen in a 3-4 year stretch ever here in Australia. And, he's obviously in his prime. He's just led this Wildcat team to 3 titles in the last 4 years. So, for them to, and he was probably taking a pay cut just to play here as well. So then to add on a 50% pay cut is a tough one. He's got a partner and a child now, so it's one of those things. And let's be honest, he's probably got about the next 4 or 5 years to really maximize his earnings as a professional basketball player. So it's not surprising to me. I actually was a little surprised with Trevor Gleason's comments that he said that kind of took him by surprise. I would have thought that would have been a real possibility, knowing there was that 50% pay cut, and he probably lost the most out of that. Not sure if he had a vote on it. I highly doubt he did have a vote on whether take that 50% pay cut. But it's a huge loss, not only for the Wildcats, but I think for the league and the fans of basketball here in the country.
Yeah, the reaction from the club was a little bit surprising. The initial media release that they put out on the Thursday, it took a couple of little jibes towards Bryce and showing their unhappiness, which I think, given everything he's provided the club in the last 3.5 years, I don't think that was necessary, especially when I think it's only common sense that anyone that's asked to take a 50% pay cut, no matter what walk of life you're in, you'd have to consider other options. Then, yeah, for Trevor to be surprised, I think was surprising as well. But you know that Wildcats organisation pretty well. How much would this be stinging them inside the club right now?
Well, it hurts. I mean, you just don't find a Bryce Cotton walking around the street ready to play on any day. So it's going to be tough to replace him. And I think, Trevor Gleason's already kind of said that look, you're not going to be able to find one person to replace a Bryce Cotton. And the team has kind of been built around him over the last couple of years as well. They've, haven't needed that scorer in the center position. They haven't needed a guy that can go out and create his own shot in the 3-man. They just needed almost a pure shooter to kind of space the floor. So it's going to change their recruiting structure and how they go about it. And I guess, it sounded like from the press conference as well that Trevor Gleason, he wasn't upset with Bryce Cotton. I think he understood the realities of it, which I really liked. I liked that he came out and backed Bryce in this. He was actually more upset with the fact that Bryce had to take a 50% pay cut. He didn't really agree with those restrictions, and especially this early. And we talked about this the last time, that it just seemed like you went to extreme measures when it may not have been needed. And do you lose a guy of the caliber of Bryce Cotton forever to this league because they jumped the gun, 4 or 5 months earlier than they may have needed to? We don't know what it's going to look like in October, November, December. So it'll be a shame if we lose a guy like Bryce Cotton, and I expect he won't be the last one of the upper caliber of players in this league.
Yeah, you're right. It's just like what we talked about on our last show. The fact that they've made this call so early that they're expecting to lose so much revenue that they've had to cut their costs, which is why they've asked the players to take the pay cut. But if we're allowed crowds by whether it's November, December, January, when the season's up and going, and the revenue the clubs are making is actually pretty similar to what it was 12 months earlier, then there was no actual need for these players to take a pay cut. And the other great point you made is that Bryce Cotton's not going to be the last one. Do you expect any of Casper Ware, Shawn Long, Mello Trimble, Lamar Patterson, Scott Machado, Cam Oliver, do you expect any of those caliber of players to be playing in the NBL next season?
It's gonna be tough. I mean, I guess it's a bit of unknown. I suspect that a lot of those guys will opt out if they had agreed or had contracts in place, and they'll wait. Who knows if the NBA Summer League will go ahead. So guys that have a resume are going to be in more demand as well over, say, in the higher paying countries, because they know what they're going to get, whereas taking a punt on a guy just coming out of college I suspect that's where we're going to get a lot more imports next year here in the NBL with the Aussie dollar exchange rate hovering around 60, 65 cents. It makes it a bit tougher. Whereas a few years ago, we were close to parity. So, the amount they can pay, and then you take, we haven't heard what the salary cap's going to be, but going to be significantly less than it was this last year. So it's a tough one. You know what? The NBL could actually be in a stronger position if you think about it. I mean, no fans are going to be allowed to go to the games, I suspect, for the next couple months. So they're going to be itching to go out and be at a live sporting event, hopefully later this year, if everything goes the way that it has been trending over the last 6 weeks. And people are going to want to get out and watch live sports. So the NBL could actually be in a better position. And what happens then? I mean, those guys that took a 50% pay cut, are they allowed to? If the Wildcats are still drawing 13,000 fans, I don't see where that plays. It just seems like it was a bit early, and hopefully we haven't lost a lot of our great players in the way. I mean, you and I both watched the talent in the league be able to draw Andrew Bogut and Bryce Cotton, who even Trevor Gleason said yesterday should be playing in NBA. We've got NBA talented players here playing, so hopefully we could still draw those players out here, because I think it's been a huge coup for the league over the last few years.
Now, of course, these players can only leave if they actually have somewhere else to go where they can find, I guess, a better paying contract, at least for the next 12 months. Do you feel like they're going to be able to do that? Do you feel like Europe will be opened up in time for them to be able to offer, good money contracts again? Is the G League getting to a point where they're starting to offer, I guess, more money to players as well? And if you're Bryce Cotton, where do you see him ending up if he does in fact end up leaving Perth?
Look, I think he's NBA caliber, so I wouldn't put it past him to be able to get an opportunity in the NBA. We don't know what that's going to look like next year as well. But if he's not in the NBA, he's going to be in a high-level Europe team, and probably from all accounts earning considerably more than he could have earned here, and and then a 50% pay cut. So even Trevor Gleason said 2-3 times more, which is I think if you're Bryce Cotton, he loved playing in Australia, loved playing for the Wildcats, and but only when you've got a short time as a professional sportsman, you got to make the most of it. And I think as tough as it is to leave a team that you love so much in the history, I think he's probably making the right decision and exploring that. And he can always come back. I think they always said that the door is open for him. But that's the other thing I don't really understand. If Bryce wants to come back on his original deal, can he? It sounds like he can. He has to take that 50% pay cut, but I don't understand how that is even allowed in labor agreements. I would have thought if the Wildcats are willing to pay him his full amount, he should be able to accept that later down the track. But I guess that's something for the NBL and maybe the Wildcats to explore at a later date if it becomes available.
Yeah, I think part of the agreement for the pay cut that the Players Association agreed to was the fact that it then allowed the players to opt out of their contract, but then also have the opportunity that if they couldn't find another job elsewhere, that they still had the security to be able to come back to that contract should they choose to. But that's where it's tricky. What if Bryce continues to look for another job until, I don't know, October? He doesn't find another job, and then he decides he wants to come back to his Wildcats contract. And what if the Wildcats have already got their roster full? What happens then? It's a little bit of a grey area to me right now, I think.
Yeah, it is. And the article I read on the NBL website kind of stated to the fact that once the Wildcats sign their import for next year, or once they've signed all 10 players, they actually lose the right to Bryce Cotton.
Oh, okay.
So then he actually becomes a free agent to any other club. It's an interesting one. How long do the Wildcats wait to sign their full 10 players if there's a chance they could get Bryce Cotton back? And then you throw in it hasn't really clarified the Australian citizenship stuff as well. So that's another one to think about. And from Bryce's point of view, I mean, makes him even more valuable to any club out there. Can you imagine Bryce Cotton as a naturalized Australian? It'd be almost unfair.
Well, it was like when, similar to when Ricky Grace did the same thing, similar to when you did the same thing at it opens up a whole lot of more opportunities for your team. There's just so much unknown right now, and also now the free agency period. It was originally meant to be starting now. It was meant to be starting at the start of May, having already been delayed, and now it's been pushed back a further 2 months until July 1. What sort of impact is that going to have?
Yeah, you find a lot of guys. We'll just kind of be waiting. I guess the rest of the world is kind of waiting to see what's going to happen and when things are going to open up. So, it's, I guess it's not a total shock. I'm surprised it's that long. I thought maybe they would just add another month and then if they needed to, but to come out and say, oh, we're just going to wait till July and see how this all plays out. I mean, maybe it's smarter just to kind of push it out farther than you think you need.
Yeah.
Give all parties an agreement on how it's all going to operate. But, for those guys that are sitting there without a contract, it's pretty tough, I reckon. You just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. I mean, most of the clubs would be paying players through June. So, you don't know what's happening come July. And it's probably not the best environment to go out and find another job at the moment as well. So, something we haven't talked about as well is my understanding is the NBL clubs would be eligible for the job keeper payments for their players. There's some, small business grants, I think up to $100,000. I think they would be eligible for that. They would be eligible for, obviously they've gotten rid of the third import, which, I think that's probably a smart from a money point of view from the league and everything. So you've got those three things right there. I mean, right there is probably a couple $100,000 savings to these clubs. So,
well, in general, you're going to be paying a local player less than an import, aren't you? Most clubs.
Yeah, and they're also reducing the size from 11 players.
Yep.
So you don't have to pay that 11th player, which was an import. So 100, 150 plus, some of the measures. I mean, you're probably saving in the $300,000 to $400,000 range already with some of the things. So that's I guess also you look at some of the cuts that the players agreed to. Seems to be a lot in this stage as well, considering some of the other factors where these clubs, I'm sure they're hurting in membership wise and that type of thing. But this period is a dead period as well.
Well, you're not making money right now anyway. Yeah.
I would have thought, revisit it come later in the year. I guess they would want some insurance of what they're going to pay their players and that type of thing. So, but it's something that I haven't heard anyone really talk about. But there'd be some things that already built in to help struggling businesses.
Now, we've got a special guest on our show again this week, Shawn, as well, and somebody that you know very well. He started his NBL career alongside you in Perth. He won a championship with you. He ended up then heading over to the arch rivals in Adelaide, and you had some great battles there against him. And then up in Cairns as well, you had a couple of playoff battles against him as well, and had plenty of good contests. And the two of you ended up sort of playing as opponents, matched up on each other quite a lot as well. And to me, there's a lot of similarities in I think both of you are the two hardest working players that I've ever seen off the court in the NBL as well. So plenty for us to talk about. Stephen Way is the man that I'm talking about. What comes to mind when you think of Stevie?
Yeah, well, my first memories of Stevie Way, he in college, he came over here and played against the Wildcats in the preseason when he was at University of Utah, and he torched us. I think he had 30 points against us and, really, I guess opened the odds to everyone around here and probably why the Wildcats went out and snatched him when he decided to leave University of Utah early. So, as a young kid coming in, he really impressed me. You hit it right there. His just work ethic and, his perfectionist.
Yeah.
The way he went about it was pretty impressive. And, I think you can be really proud of the career he had and how he was able to maximize, his opportunities and abilities out there at the highest level.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, he's moved on. He's a couple of years into his retirement now. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride for him since he's finished up his NBL career as well. So plenty for us to chat to him about, and let's get straight into it here on Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. Okay, welcome back here to Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle, and a great pleasure of mine to catch up with two guys at the same time who I spent a lot of time with during their playing careers, have enormous respect for the work that they put into their craft. I love the chance to be around both of them, and it's great to catch up with them both at the same time now, and hopefully everyone enjoys hearing them catch up with each other as well. So Stevie, thanks very much for joining us, and I think you're back in Rockhampton now, over in central Queensland, and back with the family, back in familiar territory, and hopefully you're in a pretty happy place in life.
Yeah, that's right, Pikey. Thanks very much for having me on, and it's great to hear from yourself and Shawnee as well.
Well, Stevie, I just wanted to give us give us an update on where you are at the moment, what you're up to since retiring from the NBL and the Cairns Taipans a few years ago.
Yeah, so speaking with Pikey earlier, Shawn, I think the last time I spoke with you was my final game in the NBL over in Perth there. You were doing the courtside commentary, and we had a quick discussion there, I think, prior to the game beginning. But since then, quite a bit has happened. It seems like overnight it's gone very quickly. It seems like I've just woken up and all of a sudden I understand the ins and outs of the automotive industry, and it is the family business. So I'm extremely lucky and privileged to have the opportunity to be able to move into a business that's already set up and got the structure and the leadership around me. But yeah, it's gone very quickly, and I didn't realise how much I had to learn until I was my head was underwater in the automotive industry.
Now, after you dedicated so much of your life to basketball, and it had been such a driven passion of yours, did you have any idea what you wanted to do post your basketball career? And was Ian Way Toyota somewhere where you ever did imagine working when you were growing up?
Oh, Pikey, I couldn't think of anything worse growing up as a kid, than working there at the dealership. First and foremost, Dad used to make me sweep the parts department every Saturday and Sunday. So I didn't have the fondest memories of being there as a young kid. But no, it's really funny. Perception is everything. Looking from the outside in, I never thought in a million years I would be involved. But then when I really got in there and got stuck in, I just started to realise how good again it was to have people around you that were motivated for the same reason. I guess the benefit of working together in a team is something that I certainly probably took for granted whilst I was playing basketball, to be honest. It's just, you do it. It's all you know whilst you're playing a team sport. You just, you probably take it for granted, and until it's taken away from you, you don't understand how much you rely on that support and, having those people around you that are equally as committed and motivated to a common cause, I guess.
And what's your role there at the dealership?
Yeah, currently, Shawnee, I'm in new Toyota sales. So really, we're consultants, because as a Toyota dealership, we're extremely lucky. It's a fantastic product, and it's renowned worldwide. So really, we're in the customer service industry, mate, and just trying to make the experience of purchasing or researching a new car an extremely pleasurable experience. But I've been fortunate to have, I guess, had the experience in multiple departments already. It's only been a year and a half. And so I've gone into basically pre-deliveries, which is everything that goes into getting a vehicle ready for showroom display or delivery, into stock control. So currently our little dealership has 500 plus vehicles that we need to house, store, and make sure we're not paying too much rent on each one of those units. So I've had the privilege to have been able to test my hand and try my hand in multiple departments already.
Well, it sounds like you know the business already in a year and a half and doing pretty well. How was that transition going from professional athlete to I guess as they say, getting a real job is what my kids would tell me. Dad, when are you going to get a real job? How's that transition been for you?
Well, Shawnee, first and foremost, with regards to the automotive industry, mate, I don't know the half of it. It's incredible. We've got employees that have been involved in that particular business for 25 plus years, and it amazes me they still come to work excited, having learned something new on a particular day. So I guess that's something for me that I look at and it really excites me, and I'm excited for the future. But look, the transition was a difficult one. As I kind of touched on it earlier, mate, just being around, I guess, that built-in network in a team sport environment, I always thought I was a bit of a, I enjoyed my own company, and when I wasn't on the basketball court or training, I just enjoyed getting away and just doing my own thing. But it wasn't until I had that, I guess, didn't have that inbuilt support network on a daily basis did I realise just how much I depended on it. So it was a difficult transition, and it certainly has taken some getting used to. But it's all part of life, isn't it? And we're learning every day. So it's been great.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part for athletes as well, because you just have everything set in stone. You know what your routine is. You're told to be here at a certain time, and for guys like yourself and myself, you took a lot of pride in making sure you were ready, and all of a sudden you've got this newfound freedom, but also you don't have those things that you have to be doing, and so you have to kind of figure it out pretty quickly. It's a unique transition. We've talked to a few athletes on the show, and I think it's all the same. That it's one of those things that you can prepare as much as you want, but until you're kind of thrown off the deep end, it's kind of sink or swim.
Yeah, absolutely right.
How do you reflect on your journey now, Stevie, to play in the NBL? Shawn talked about just before we got you on the line, and he remembered that when you came over to play for the University of Utah against the Wildcats, that's when he first had a glimpse of what you were capable of. And the next year, you were teammates, and you spent that time in Perth. You ended up winning the championship in 2010. You go to Adelaide and spend a few years there, where probably you didn't have great team success, but you had a couple of great moments, especially. I remember that first a couple of wins in Perth that were pretty memorable, and then you go up to Cairns and finish your career there, end up playing 127 games in Cairns and create a great legacy there. How do you reflect on the 10 years of professional basketball that you played?
Very fondly. It was a fantastic 10 years, and as you said, Pikey, although there were certainly down moments, you can always learn something from those moments, and I certainly did. And from time to time, I reflect on, I guess, the last year and a half, moving into another industry or another stage of my life. I reflect on some of those moments throughout my career and how they've shaped me as a person and how they've really equipped me for life after basketball. Some of those experiences and moments are just invaluable for the transition into life after basketball. And it's really important that I sat back and I guess just took note and still trying to apply it from day to day. But fantastic experience over in Perth, followed by Adelaide, and then to finish the career in Cairns. 3 fantastic clubs, played with some absolutely incredible people, great support network, got to see the country and New Zealand. So really, I mean, extremely lucky to be able to have had the career that I did and finished when I was young, and now I'm moving into the new stage of my life where I know absolutely nothing.
I had the chance to sit down and talk to you about this a couple of times later in your career, and I'm fascinated to get your thoughts now that you can look back on your playing days, because I saw, having known you throughout your whole career, I saw such a great change in you from when, in those early years, especially in Perth, it looked like you're a little bit, torture's not the right word, but you were such a perfectionist that you were the hardest working player out there, but it was like you just wanted to be perfect. And if you didn't do everything on the court perfectly, it seemed to really get you down. You just couldn't let it go until you got it right, until you were doing everything perfectly, and that must have really played on your mind, and that must have been tough for that period. But then by the last couple of years in Cairns, I feel like whatever the reason was, maybe it was working with Jody Maguire, I'm not sure, but you had seemed to have released the pressure on yourself, and you'd become almost the ultimate teammate and leader on that team, where you would just go out and happy to play your role, but do whatever you had to do for the team without putting that pressure on yourself to be perfect all the time. Is that, have I got it completely wrong, or is that how you kind of feel in reflection as well?
I think it's probably just a reflection of my life and where I was at certain points in my life. I mean, being a young player, coming straight out of the college system into a professional environment, and I don't think any young player would be too dissimilar. You know, you want to get in there and make a name for yourself, and everything is so important to what you do, and basketball is everything. You know, but as you evolve and you get older, I guess you start to value other things in your life, and your perspective on life and basketball and friends and family and all of those sorts of things, they change. And you change with it. So I think it was really just a reflection of the stage of my life that I was in. And as I evolved, I started to value different things like, really caring for my teammates and making sure that we had a culture up there in Cairns that was conducive to success and a good place to be around. I just think it was a stage, or the cycle of, I guess, the stage of my career that kind of just followed on from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I think I was impressed. I was impressed when you came into the Wildcats and how you fitted in, and instantly just with your work ethic. I thought it was it was pretty impressive, especially for a young player, which sometimes they kind of need to learn. That's one of the things they need to learn. That wasn't the case with you. You wanted to get better, and I think that's probably why coaches loved having you on their team, because you were such a great role model for those guys. And then to be able to show those leadership qualities later on in your career as well. I think it was one of those things where teams really valued your ability to affect other players on the team, and when you're on the court, I mean, guys had to respect your abilities, and I thought later on in your career you just evolved your game as well, and a really important piece in some of those great Taipans teams that was always a great battle whenever we faced you. There are a couple questions I wanted to ask you, and just guess for the listeners out there, who probably give us your top 2 or 3 toughest opponents that you played against throughout your NBL career?
Oh,
you can't say Shawn.
Yeah, leave me out. I don't know if I'm in there, but don't even. That's not even a question. I'm always curious to hear, because it's different. It surprises me every time, but I love to ask this question. I know the listeners would like to hear it as well.
Well, Shawn, you were certainly one of my most admired. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of the toughest, look, early on in my career, I think another one I admired and kind of strived to was Kirk Penny. When he was in his heyday, he was impossible to guard. He'd tear off those screens, and he wouldn't even have his body square, and he'd be throwing up 3-pointers. It seemed like that he could change the trajectory of his shot to beat the outreach hand. He was fantastic.
That game 2 of the semi-finals in 2011, that was the most unstoppable individual performance we've just about seen.
Oh, and I still remember a shot that he hit from the baseline. That was at the Old Challenge Stadium, right in front of our home bench. And I still remember the shot that he hit. I believe it was an Isaiah Victor or a player along those lines, a long athletic player known for their defense. And it was over an outstretched hand. And this ball it seemed like it sat in the air for 10 seconds. That's how high he shot it. And it just landed nothing but net. But he had the capability of doing that, and I think Mika Vakona was another one. He was just the type of guy you knew when if he'd switched on you were in for a tough assignment. Probably easier just to pass the ball off and let someone else go to work. But he was another one that was very difficult. But yeah, it was great to see kind of guys like Chris Goulding as well come into their own towards the end of my career. They kind of started to catapult themselves as real valued players within their teams and within the league, within the world game, and it was really cool to see that type of involvement too.
Yeah, I think that there was, I think Kirk Penny I think he's really underrated and how tough he was. And, I think we used to scouting. He was a world-class shooter, not just a great shooter. He was world-class. There's very few that could come off a screen, get their feet set beyond balance, and be able to get a shot off that quick. It was pretty remarkable. So I think you're spot on right there. The other one I wanted to ask you was about Torrey Craig. You played with him in Cairns. Are you surprised at his success going into the NBA and how he's been able to adapt in that regard?
Yeah, I was actually. I mean, in Cairns, he was always a big part of what we did. He was an extremely valuable part of that push to the grand final series where we lost in 2 games to New Zealand. But, he was a guy, and you see it all the time, he was a guy that came in, all the natural gifts in the world, just needed some refining. And I think a guy like Aaron Fern, head coach at the time, did wonders for Torrey Craig. Although Fernie was very hard on him, Fernie's very hard on anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, Fernie's going to treat you the same. And I think, instead of going into his shell, credit to Torrey, he worked his tail off, basically. And days off, he was in there grinding it out. And, he persevered, worked his tail off. And you know what? He was a really good guy. He was a great locker room guy as well. Nothing ever seemed to faze Torrey. He wasn't a selfish guy. So I think when he moved from Cairns to Brisbane, as we were talking about before, I think it was just the next phase of his career, the next phase of his life. He'd had all those skills that he developed in Cairns, and he took them into in a different environment and just excelled, went from strength to strength.
Yeah, it was. I'm probably in that same boat as well. I was surprised that, I always thought he was a good player, and, he was actually came off the bench behind you for a lot of his career up there in Cairns, and you kind of probably didn't have that consistency, and maybe that was the fact that, he wasn't playing the 30, 35 minutes. He was getting the 20, 25, but then, be able to get that opportunity with Brisbane, and then now, he gets a lot of minutes in the NBA. I think it probably goes to show how good the NBL is becoming over the years, and we're getting guys that, probably not setting the league on fire. I don't think his stats, they weren't wild when he was in Cairns. But then to, playing in the NBA, I think it just shows the talent level that is in the NBL.
Yeah, that's right. And there were times I was watching the NBL last year thinking there is no way that I would still be competing at that level as well as the NBL. I was extremely impressed with the quality of play, and extremely happy for some of the guys I see that have persevered through some pretty tough times. I think, Shawnee, if you remember, I think it may have been the year that we won it, mate. Prior to that season, there was talk of the NBL basically not going ahead. They were going to forfeit the season for a year, and then they ended up going ahead. I think it was with a 6 or 8 team league, and we ended up winning that. But, there were some pretty tough times there. And to see guys like Todd Blanchfield, Chris Goulding, Alex Loughton had a great career. These types of guys and yourself, these types of guys that have seen, taken the good with the bad. Kevin Lish is another one. I'm really happy for those guys, and the quality of play now in Australia is just fantastic. It's a pleasure to watch, and although, I'd love to be out there, I'm thoroughly enjoying being on the other side of the white lines also.
Speaking of that, pretty much gone cold turkey on basketball in the last 2 years since you retired, and for the 20 years before that, obviously basketball was pretty much your life. What's it like having a life that's not surrounded by basketball now? Is it a breath of fresh air? Is it starting to miss it? What's it like?
Yeah, it's I've got something else to sink my teeth into. Shawnee, I think I was always the type of guy that lacked balance. It was just basketball, all basketball. And, I guess I certainly worked on that later on in my career. As I evolved as a person, it's just other things became more relevant in my life, and I started spending more time on, I guess, areas outside of basketball, which gave me that balance naturally. But I guess I'm going through the same thing now. I'm making up for lost time in this particular role that I'm in, and I just want to try and make the most out of this opportunity. So I really haven't had time to stop and think, and I haven't had time to miss basketball, Pike, to be honest. I'm not the type of person that I don't feel comfortable sitting back and relaxing. To me, sitting on a beach and reading a book isn't my idea of fun. I'd rather be up early, grinding it out in anything, and just putting in the hours, and that's my idea of enjoyment.
No, I think it's been great to catch up, Stevie. Appreciate the time giving us an update on your career, where you're at, and I think it's always good to kind of catch up with people and find how they kind of view things looking back on it a few years. I think it's good to kind of reflect on that. So appreciate taking the time. It was great to catch up.
10 years since you two played in a championship together. Is this as close as a reunion as we're going to get?
Well, the way the travel's going at the moment, I don't think anyone's going to be going west. Or do you still have your place in Mount Lawley or Mount Hawthorne?
No, Mount Lawley. Yeah, funny story about that, Shawnee. And I'd like to hear how both of you are coping with all of these. It's unprecedented times with COVID-19, and I'd love to hear how you're both doing and coping with it. But you wouldn't believe it, Shawnee. I had that place on the market for some time. It wasn't the best time to sell, but look, I didn't really have the need to hang on to it any longer, and it was becoming more difficult than it needed to be, having a place over in Perth, not being able to get over there. But it was right around the time I think Damo was starting to break into the real estate industry, and you wouldn't believe it. He reached out to me one day, and the timing was perfect because we were struggling to get this place sold, and he was young Damo, the new real estate agent on the block, and he said, "Stevie, I'll sell it for you." And sure enough, 2 weeks later, it was done. So,
really?
So Damo sold it for me. I think that was the first house he ever sold.
That's awesome. Well, what that's got to be a good selling point for Damo to say, hey, look, so how long on the market had it been?
Oh, look, I think it had been on the market months anyway. And a very desirable property right there in the middle of Mount Lawley, stone's throw from the main strip there. But it's just difficult to get a handle on how the place looks or how it's presented, and without actually being there and being able to control it. And I think once again it just speaks to how athletes can transition with the right mindset. And obviously, if the hunger is there, how well they can transition from a career in professional sports to life after basketball. And to be honest, I think that's what ended up selling the property, was just how enthusiastic Damo was. And I got the sense, I didn't go over there, or I didn't. This was before the times of Zoom conference calls. We did everything via mobile phone. But I got the sense of how hungry Damo was over the phone to get stuck in and to sell that property. And you can't fake that. And people feed off it. People understand and people feel it. So I think it was. His desire to sell that property certainly shone through and got it done in no time. So that was awesome. The best I ever made.
Some people you just know have a personality for that. And Damo's definitely one of them, with that smile. Charming personality for sure.
Well, if he takes the same mentality that he does with his defense into his life after basketball, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, no, I think he'll be all right. I think he's doing it right as well. He's kind of dipping his toes in. I'll be surprised if he plays next year, but at least he's given himself kind of a year and a half of getting some experience in, and he's not starting from scratch. So I think he'll do all right. Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and another one that it was an absolute pleasure to have shared the court with him. Yeah, I think we were both better players when he was on the court with us, weren't we? Absolutely. How are you going in the current times, guys? Yeah, everything's on hold for me, but I think things are looking pretty positive. So, because I run a lot of basketball programs and camps and stuff, so hopefully over the next few weeks things will open up. But I've just got to take take my son off to play some basketball. But it's been good to catch up, and I'll try and give you a call over the next few weeks and get a little bit better update.
Good to speak with you, Shawnee.
All right, thanks for joining us, Shawn. But thanks for asking, Stevie. And obviously, it's throwing life into a little bit of turmoil from my point of view. As you know, most of my income stems from working for either sporting clubs or sporting organisations, and they've all pretty much shut up shop for now. So income's a little bit hard to come by for now, but pretty much just have to hang in there, because I hope that once the sports start up again, I'll be able to step back into the same roles that I have. But yeah, right now it's a lot of the unknown, really, and it's a little bit scary.
Oh, good. And I think if this has shown us anything, it's just how much Australians care for and love their sporting environment. And how much it's dearly missed. So certainly won't be taking it for granted once it comes back and it's in full swing again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from my point of view, I'll let you go because we've taken up a lot of your time. But you've always been one of my favourite people to deal with, and to get the chance in this platform, it was probably 7 or 8 months ago when Shawn and I, discussed doing a podcast together, and one of the big factors was for the chance to reconnect with people like you who Shawn might have lost touch with, and I think it's a great thing for him and for even for you you might just not, because all of our lives move in different directions, you just lose touch with people that had a big impact on your previous life. But I think one of the great things we can do here is for people like you and Shawn to reconnect, and hopefully that's been a positive for you too.
No, it's been great to talk with yourself and Shawn, Pike. And you're right, life gets in the way, but if COVID's shown us anything, mate, it's that we can adapt, and the beauty of technology allows us to catch up from vast distances, and it's been great to hear from you.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you. You were always so good to me when we worked together at the Wildcats, and then once you left in Adelaide, and especially the last couple of years in Cairns, we spent a fair bit of time, staying in touch, and when I was doing some work for the Taipans as well. So you've always been great to me. It was a great pleasure to watch your whole career unfold, but probably even better for me to now know that you're in a happy place post-basketball, and great to hear from you, and I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. But thanks so much for joining us here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle.
Bye, have a great time.